Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2025, and today I want to talk to you all about going no contact with your toxic relatives. For many of us, this is a last resort. We have tried everything to get our toxic relatives to treat us in a way that is thoughtful, caring, and considerate. We have tried everything to get through to them that their behavior is just not good. Their behavior is abusive. We've tried everything and nothing has worked. And so going no contact is oftentimes the last resort in order to maintain our peace. I've had to go no contact with a lot of family and also friends because I realized that they just wanted to show up in my life any kind of way. And I realized that the moment that you begin to hold people accountable and you set healthy boundaries for yourself in order to keep yourself safe, what ends up happening is that these people no longer like you. These people no longer want to be around you. These people oftentimes will try to violate your boundaries and test your boundaries, and then you have to cut them off because you realize that they have no respect. They only liked you as long as they could disrespect you. The moment that you say, no, you cannot treat me this way, you cannot show up any kind of way in my life, this is when they get angry and they accuse you of being disrespectful. They accuse you of dishonoring them. They accuse you of being overly sensitive. They just deploy all these accusations, all these false accusations in order to shame you and manipulate you into once again letting them disrespect you. But that's the thing. As you begin to heal and you begin to do your work, it becomes very difficult to be around certain people and certain spaces. Certain spaces and certain people begin to trigger you, and you find yourself overly triggered and you ask yourself, why? Because as you are beginning to heal, you can no longer tolerate the same behavior that you once tolerated before. And that's the thing. Those people, once upon a time, they benefited from your brokenness. They benefited from you having no boundaries. They were able to vent their rage. They were able to vent their toxicity, and that was fine. But the moment that you drew a line in the sand and you said no more, you will not be showing up in my life this way. Here's how I need you to show up for me. All of a sudden, they begin to sabotage the relationship. They begin to yell and scream and get angry at you and use anger as a manipulation tactic. They begin to weaponize either their anger, scripture, or their love. And we need to talk about that for a second because many of us who were raised by toxic relatives, we oftentimes were told, I love you, but yet and still the behavior never matched the words. So in a way, they weaponize love. They try to use love as a license to disrespect us. And this is why I find it very difficult to accept love. Because the love that I got growing up was a love that was just very inconsistent. On one hand, I'm being told that my relatives love me, but then on the other hand, they dishonor me. They don't respect my boundaries. They disrespect me. So my thing is this: love that does not come with respect is not really love at all. A person has to come correct when they sit up there and tell you that they love you. If they don't respect you, how can they love you? It's like love and respect go hand in hand. You can't say that you love me, you continue to disrespect me, or you continue to violate my boundaries. That's not love. And then when I hold you accountable and I tell you that what you're doing is not okay, You get angry about it? That makes no sense to me. You know, when a person is genuinely caring about how you feel, they want to understand. They don't rush to being defensive. They don't rush to anger. A person that rushes to anger, that person doesn't really care about you or respect you. Because the thing is, if they did respect you, they would want to understand why you feel the way that you feel. They would not just instantly rush to anger. And so when you have people in your life who, when you tell them that their behavior is just not, it's not proper, it's not acceptable, and they immediately rush to anger, yeah, those people don't really care about you. They just like benefiting from your brokenness. They like benefiting from your insecurities. They like being able to manipulate you. And like I said, as you begin to do your work, you find it very difficult to be around certain people in certain spaces because those people and those spaces, they were who you used to be. They remind you of the person that you once were, but are no longer. And so it's hard to be in those spaces. Um, and it's also hard to be with people who are not willing to do the work. Because here you are, you're doing the work, and you're also challenging them to do the work, but they just are not ready. They're not ready. They don't have the insight, they don't have the level of awareness that will foster a healthy and a safe relationship. They lack that. And the thing about it is this, what I'm learning is that you could love someone, but you can't take responsibility for their nonsense and for their wounds. You know? You can't keep fighting for people who don't even want to step foot in the ring. You can't do it. And I'll say that again. You can't keep fighting for people who don't even want to step foot in the ring. And I realized that for so long I've been fighting for people, trying to keep people in my life, keep people, as a support. And they're just not, they don't have the capacity to want to stay. They don't want to stay. They don't want to do the work that it takes in order to stay in my life. And that's hurtful. It feels like a rejection. It definitely re-triggers some wounds that I have, some abandonment wounds and some trust wounds. But you know something, at the end of the day, you can't force people to stay in your life. You can't force them to do the work. And so you have to learn how to let people go. You have to learn how to accept the fact that they are not willing in this moment in time to do the work that it takes in order to stay in your life. And so you wish them well, and you also begin to seek out other supports and people that are motivated to do the work. Right now, I gotta be honest, the world seems to be experiencing global burnout. People are extremely depressed. Nobody wants to do their work right now. People barely want to show up to work at their jobs, at their 9 to 5s. They don't want to do the work, the internal work that it takes in order to build community and foster relationship right now. People are exhausted. What they're looking for are people who will pour into them, who will take the initiative to do everything for them. And I'm not looking for that kind of relationship. So when you're not looking for that one-sided relationship, you oftentimes sit by yourself. And that's okay. That's okay. In this season of solitude, I'm learning that I will definitely begin to heal myself. I will continue to do my work. So that way, I will attract people who are also committed to doing their work. People who are intentional about doing their work and who are intentional about building and fostering healthy relationships and healthy communities, because I'm to the point where I can no longer be in spaces or with people, like I mentioned before, who are not committed to the journey. I can't do it. There's a part of their behavior that offends my spirit. And so like I said, everybody has their own journey, and I make room for that. I make room for their journey, but I also realize that I can't go with them on that journey. There comes a point where you have to separate from people who are not going where you're going. And it's unfortunate because you think, as I mentioned earlier in this video, you think that these people will always be there to support you and will always be there to love you on your journey. But a lot of times it's just not that way. A lot of times people just, they have their own minds. They have their own journey. They still want to cycle through rage and anger, and they still want to engage in these rage spirals. If that's what they want to do, that's them. Have at it. I don't want that for my life. I don't want to keep on yelling and screaming and, dealing with abuse. Because a lot of times with your toxic relatives, they expect you to put up with the same abuse that they put up with, especially if they come from the baby boomer generation. Me, I'm a millennial. My parents, they come from the baby boomer generation. And in that generation, they oftentimes put up with a lot of disrespect from their parents. They put up with a lot of abuse. And they suppressed their feelings about that abuse. And what ended up happening was they oftentimes acted out by way of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, anger addiction, sex addiction, food addiction. A lot of compulsive behaviors are the result of suppression of their own identities. This is why they've engaged in so many of these compulsive behaviors, because they were not allowed to vent how they felt. Before the baby boomer generation, their parents were taught to believe that children were better seen and not heard. So children were oftentimes silenced. They were oftentimes abused under the guise of love. So they learned that trait. My generation, millennials, we ain't having it. We ain't having it. If you're not going to show up in our lives in a healthy way, well, then we won't have you in our lives, period. Because we're not putting up with the nonsense that our parents did. And I think in a way that generation gap is what's responsible for a lot of the breakdowns in families that I've noticed recently. A lot of families right now are going through very, I would say, difficult circumstances when it comes to relating. There are a lot of people going no contact with their parents. A lot of adult children are going no contact with their parents because they are unwilling to tolerate abuse under the guise of love. They're unwilling to continue to put up with disrespect. And as I mentioned earlier, my parents' generation, they put up with that. They put up with the abuse. And we're saying that, no, we're not going to put up with that abuse. And because we're saying, no, we're not going to put up with that, our parents oftentimes interpret that as disrespect and dishonor. Oh, you're not honoring me. The scriptures say to honor your mother and your father. And they see honor as us putting up with abuse, disrespect, manipulation. That's what they see, honoring their parent. No, and that's not honoring your parent. I want to be very, very clear here. Putting up with verbal, physical, emotional, spiritual abuse is not honoring your parent. Because if you look at Ephesians 6:4, it says, you fathers, do not be exasperating your children. And that includes mothers as well. And what does exasperating mean? Exasperating means irritating them. Irritating them. And also it says in the scriptures so many things about respect. So many things about love. Love is kind. Love is patient. Love doesn't seek its own reward. This is what love is, and a lot of parents nowadays and a lot of relatives, they're not showing love the way that they are commissioned to. And me personally, I had to go no contact from my parents because I started to see that I was about to disrespect my mother. I started to see that she was beginning to compromise my spiritual integrity and my assignment, which is to honor my mother and my father. So when you start to see that your parents are a threat to your spiritual integrity, that's when you have to go low to no contact. You have to. Because you, for one, have a responsibility to your great creator, which is God. And if your parents are not doing what they're supposed to do, that doesn't mean that you have to lax on what you need to do. If anything, you have to stay committed to your responsibility as a God-fearing person. And that's integrity. Integrity is, even in the face of opposition, you're still committed to your assignment. And so anything that is going to threaten my assignment, I'm going to have to let it go. I'm going to have to go no contact with it for a while. This does not mean that I don't love my mother. This does not mean that I don't miss her. This means that I'm starting to value myself and my relationship with God. And I'm also starting to set healthy boundaries that keep myself safe in the absence of protection. When you are not protected by your family members, my father never protected me. My mother, she gave a measure of protection early on, but once again, it was inconsistent protection. It was intermittent protection. It wasn't stable protection throughout my life. And so when you have caretakers who don't give you that stable protection, you have to give that to yourself. And what that means is that you have to set boundaries and honor those boundaries and remain consistent with those boundaries in the absence of proper caretakers. Because I've already determined in my life that I don't have relatives who will protect me and who will take care of me. Many of my relatives are not doing very well. Many of them are actually on the struggle bus. So I realize that they just don't have the wherewithal to offer that level of support to me. So I have to give that to myself. And in giving that to myself, I serve as a model and an inspiration for them to begin to consider getting their lives together. Because that's another thing. When you begin to honor your boundaries, you're also serving as an inspiration for other people. You're also providing an invitation for them to begin to rethink how they're living. And so if they want to continue to live how they want to live, that's cool. That's fine. But you don't have to stay committed to dysfunction. You don't have to do that. And that's the beautiful thing about adulting, is that you can do a different thing. You can do a different thing. You can do the right thing. Is it going to be easy? No, it's not. Is it going to be worth it? Yes, it will be. And that's what I do. That's what I have to stay. I have to stay focused on that. Because I can't continue to replay these toxic dynamics. I can't continue to replay these unhealthy relational dynamics. I can't. And that's the thing. We're also, as millennials, we are curse breakers. We are cycle breakers. We break cycles. And our family members, they want to perpetuate these cycles. They want these cycles to continue. And when you are a cycle breaker, dealing with someone who wants to perpetuate unhealthy cycles, you're going to always clash. You're going to always clash. And this is why you have to go no contact, because they don't want to break the cycles. They're comfortable. The cycles are serving them. You know, there's a payoff for them perpetuating these unhealthy cycles. And so they have not yet seen the consequences that such cycles have. So they're comfortable. They're comfortable perpetuating those cycles. And that's cool. If that's what you want to do, have at it. Me, I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable continuing to perpetuate these unhealthy dynamics. And so, as a cycle breaker, I'm breaking those cycles. No, I'm not going to sit up there and tell you that I love you, but yet continue to verbally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally disrespect you. No, I'm not going to do that because that undermines trust. That also makes you question someone's love. Wait a minute. In one breath, you're telling me that you love me, but in another breath, you're calling me a bitch or a coward or this, that. No, 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 no. That's not love. That's not love. Like I said, if your love does not come with respect, it's a shoddy form of love. It is an incomplete version of love. And I'm going to say that again. If your love does not come with respect, it is an incomplete version of love. You have to make sure that your love comes with respect. They go hand in hand. And so this is why a lot of us millennials and Gen Z and Gen Y, this is why they're going no contact with their parents and their relatives, because they're starting to see that they're not being respected. They're starting to see that the love or these proclamations or expressions of love are not consistent with the behaviors. And so they're getting tired and they're charging their family with the responsibility of doing something about this. Let's heal. This is what I told my mother. I said, let's heal. I brought her into therapy. I did all the things, but still, it was not enough. And I'm done protecting the image of my mother at the expense of my truth. I'm done. I'm done protecting the denial system of my mother. I'm done protecting all these things. I'm done. Because when you're younger, you learn that in order to keep the love of your caretaker, you have to protect their image. Children oftentimes will deny the extent of their abuse in order to keep those loving feelings between them and their mothers and fathers. And in doing that, in denying the reality of their abuse, what ends up happening is that they find themselves in relationships in adulthood that mirror the same unhealthy dynamics and that mirror the same abuse. Because for so long they've been taught to deny that abuse, to protect the people that abuse them. They've been taught to protect that behavior. And so they get in these relationships in adulthood and they're wondering why they continue to tolerate abuse from these people. Well, our parents are our first relationships. And if you learn how to tolerate such abuse in those relationships, chances are you'll do the same thing in your adult relationships. You're going to find a partner that says that they love you, but then they black your eye. You're going to find a partner that says that they love you, but then they're criticizing you, being overly critical and being verbally abusive or emotionally abusive towards you. But they said that they love me, so that's what matters, right? No. As I mentioned before, if your love is not coupled with respect, it is a shoddy version of love. And it's an incomplete version. So for all those who have had to go no contact with their relatives and their friends, I get it completely. And once again, take heart and take comfort in the fact that you are growing and learning how to strengthen your boundary system. Take comfort in the fact that you are learning how to love yourself, and that sometimes going no contact with someone else is an act of self-love and self-preservation. And you can't say that you love somebody else in good faith and continue to tolerate abuse, even from those who claim to love you. No, no. Because too many times growing up, we are encouraged to uphold this sense of toxic loyalty. We're loyal to our family members through anything. They could beat us, stab us, hurt us, yell at us, disrespect, and we continue to remain loyal. No, you can't continue to remain loyal to abuse. If a person is not motivated to change, if a person is not motivated to show up in your life in a way that makes you feel safe, loved, heard, seen, valued, and respected, they gotta go. It's just that simple. We are no longer putting up with disrespect. We are no longer continuing to tolerate abuse under the guise of love. We are no longer sitting here and protecting the image of our parents, caretakers, or relatives at the expense of our truth. We're not doing that anymore. What we are doing is erecting firm boundaries. We're telling those we love that we want relationship with them, but not if it means putting up with their abuse. So they get to decide. We dignify them with a choice. They get to decide whether or not they want to show up in our lives in a way that's healthy or not. They get to decide. But we also get to decide whether or not we want to continue to deal with these people. We get to decide whether or not we want to continue to be in relationship with the dysfunction. So, and that's a beautiful thing. So as I mentioned, all those out there who are going no contact with their relatives, I understand. I can definitely relate. And while you navigate this process, definitely remember what feels safe for you. Do what feels safe for you. In the absence of those loving relationships, you have to be the love and support that you need. So do what feels safe for you. I love y'all. Peace.